Wonderful. We are indeed live.
Oh,
Very
that's
nice.
great.
So let's just
Are
wait for people.
you
Right now it's
100%
just
sure? Because on YouTube I don't see anything
really.
on the Fanaat YouTube.
I just went live.
I
You have to look at it. There's some latency, so
okay. Um. Okay, so it does not look like 7 waiting. Okay.
it's not looking like what?
It looks like there's 7 people waiting, but it's also
Is it for the
not
character
showing
creation or the
anything.
different one?
Long. Okay, so 0 people are watching this, and the live one is playing some music.
Yeah,
currently.
that's what's happening. Can you hear us talking in the live one?
Okay, and the live one is playing some music.
Yeah.
Currently. Okay.
Nice. Can you hear us talking?
Okay. Yes. Okay. The live one is playing some music.
Yeah.
Currently. Okay.
So it seems to be working. That's nice.
Yes. Okay. The live one is playing. Well, Have you opened the stream?
I have indeed opened the stream.
Okay, so there are 2 people watching, and I think it's the 2 of us.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll just now drop in our faces and swap over to a stream overlay, so we can wait. People show up. If not, they don't. That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, so we're just going to wait here.
Wait here. I mean, we can talk about whatever as long people are coming.
So what did you prepare?
Well, considering the kick-in just booted us a certain time frame to do this, which is apparently now, not an hour later. I've not prepared much. But I guess we could just, for the sake of the video, start talking, because it will get recorded on the Fanaat website. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think that since we are both here, we can just have a little discussion on how we see the. We can make it like into a little bit of a podcast. That would be a bit
Sure.
easier.
Let's do a podcast
to fix, and we can do the same for the character creation if you want.
Yeah,
in
sure.
order. Okay. So RPGs. What are RPGs? RPGs are role-playing games. They're games that you basically, they're social, so you're having multiple people, and usually on the tabletop RPGs, people are gathering together in one place and create a character that is giving us a little bit of math to decide what kind of powers and what kind of abilities each character has. And there is one player who is basically controlling the world around them. It's called a dungeon master or storyteller. And this person is giving them the feedback from the universe. Like, people are doing things and they get the feedback from the universe through the storyteller. One very good example is we both get into a bar. Somebody wants to talk to the barman to order a beer. and the answer from the barman, or what you see inside the bar, that the storyteller is going to be the person who's going to tell you that. In specifically Dungeons and Dragons, it's a more Tolkien-esque kind of theme, with elves, dwarves, magic is real, obviously, and it's medieval times. So the technology also, it is quite medieval, and the belief system around is quite medieval as well. Usually there is some sort of epic adventure. There's something to fight. Usually it has to do with monsters and treasure. So the two goals that are actually that the character usually gets to achieve is to kill monsters and get loot. And this is how you progress. You get points in order to progress your character as well. Would you like to add something to this as an explanation, as a short explanation?
I guess the most important thing is that basically people are gathering to tell a story. It's basically a combined effort to tell a story that everybody's involved in. So storytelling on your own is, well, just dependent on your own. But if you want to tell a story together with a lot of other people, then you will have to, of course, come to some rules, some conclusions. You all agree on one storyteller, which in this case, as you've explained, is the dungeon master. People narrating, so to say, the narrator, and the main actors of the story, which in this case all get assigned to one person that wants to be part of it. I think
and basically,
yeah.
Not one person has full control of the story. Everybody is adding their own bit on top of each other.
Well, at least that should be ideal, you know. The ideal case would be that people all can contribute.
Yeah. So usually, in order to do this, as you said, there is an agreement on the word, and we're usually basically setting up the environment, the word, and then each character, each person is going to create. Each player is going to create a character that will play in that word. Usually this kind of idea is, to my experience so far, is pitched by the storyteller, and everybody is coming together to agree that, okay, we're going to play pirates in Caribbean Sea, somewhere in an ocean. What?
I was just googling tabletop settings, and I got cutlery, which is not the kind of thing you want to do as your tabletop setting.
Yeah, exactly. That's not what we were looking for. Well, obviously, it's not only D&D. People can play completely different games, like Call of Cthulhu, for example, that is in the 1920s, and it's a horror setting.
Yeah.
Or it could be Vampires the Masquerade, that I hold so dear in my heart, and it can be even modern times, but it's basically humanity as we know it, just with magic creatures on top of it.
Shadowrun, for example, is a really popular one. As you said, Call of Cthulhu. There we go. There's also probably one with horror. Well, not the game. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Traveler is quite interesting, and it is a futuristic kind of space themed.
Yeah.
And it also has to do with not only with the theme and the era and the kind of technology around, but also with the style of gameplay, because each game is like rendering itself a little bit for a kind of gameplay. For example, Traveler, that is a more futuristic one, is a lot of it's less fighting because you die extremely fast.
Oof.
And more trying to scheme and do some more politics and a lot of paperwork. So it renders itself for a specific gameplay, while D&D, like, your characters are a bit more expendable. You can really fight a lot. It's a little more, bloodthirsty as a game. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess D&D is more centered around the traditional epic, so to say. Like, you have these fantasy figures that are doing these indescribable feats, so to say.
And it also has to do with a lot of agency, because
Yeah.
the more power you have,
Yeah.
the more you can,
yeah.
change
like,
the
yeah.
environment.
Some say even spirals out of control later on, and the narrator has to break through that wall.
And rain everybody in the game. Oh yeah, your mage can basically mess with timelines now, but
Shit.
unfortunately you saw so much stuff that now you're insane. And
Yeah.
so let's say that the first rule of any game, any RPG tabletop game, is that any rule can and should be bent in order for people to have fun.
Yeah.
So there we go into homebrews. So people create their own universes inside the agreed upon universe, or their own special spells and items in order to make an interesting story, in order to make for an interesting game, basically. And in that aspect, in the aspect of having fun, there is also a little bit of a area of player etiquette and how we make sure that everybody has fun equally and there are no big problems. How do you deal usually with that?
I guess the best is actually, before you even start to play, to agree on certain rules. There are some, you could say, unspoken rules, but they should be at least mentioned once. For example, it may sound a little, I don't know, snowflakey, I guess.
Come on,
but you will have to agree that there's this is a safe zone, since everybody is more or less contributing their own imagination to it. It can be on a very personal level. So one of the first things I like my players to understand is that you should respect other people's decisions as much, like, it's a mutual respect thing,
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're talking storytelling, people do a lot of self-inserting. So let's say you ridicule or violate someone's imagination or their character, as it is more practical. This is basically an offense to themselves, to at least a part of themselves. So ideally, you should play these games in an environment of friends.
And of course, there are teams of people who agree that, it's fine, you can, burn my character to a crisp, and that is okay with me. Or a lot of other, non-PG stuff. But it is a thing that is, of course, agreed upon, and it's quite rare. Usually in games, we are having, in most of, beginner games, you don't attack each other. Or this kind of things will be mentioned at least from the beginning of the game. And it's also a good practice to regularly, catch up with the players. So the storyteller and the players, since the storyteller is this person that has the most agency on the storyline itself, and they can basically block actions if those actions are not basically permitted. They're catching up with each other and saying, this is how we feel, or even this is a kind of gameplay that we would like to have. We would like to fight more, or we would like to, play some political games more and make sure that everybody is having a good time and not being, I don't know, bored or pushed to the side.
I think that's like one of the basic principles, the foundation for every game, is that everybody should have fun. I mean, it's a game. Why play it if you don't have fun? So, well, that's what I was gonna say. Oh yeah, people have to keep in mind also that this is a play. It's in the name, role play, but it is very much imaginative and fictive. There is no.
It's theatrics.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's theatrics.
and the things
what
that
it is.
people say are not necessarily things that they believe. They might be things that their
Yes.
character believes. For example, I might be playing a dwarf who really hates elves. And my dwarf constantly swears against tall people. I did actually have a character who was like, oh, the taller the
Why
get,
am I not surprised, Neffy? Why am I not surprised?
It might be because I'm 1.5 meters on a table with my hands up in the air. But the point is that doesn't make me hateful towards, I don't know, the Dutch people because they're tall. It just makes that my character happens to be a bit of a jerk sometimes, and everybody accepts that. And generally, if somebody is playing a character and you have a problem with the gameplay itself, then this is also up for discussion. There is no excuse like, oh, my character is a jerk and I can be a jerk to everybody, right?
Yeah.
There is a very good balance to be had, and that is also nice to have an experienced storyteller that is going to help with that. And that's something that the Kelder can help with, because we do have a lot of people who are running games, like us two, for example.
Yeah, that's true. I'm a DM. You're DM as well, right? You're running Vampires. I'm running 5e. At this point, if you're talking examples, I guess one that is popularized during recent streaming of online D&D, so to say, is Critical Role. I think one should be careful, since this is really high standard show, but if you're interested in how these games should be optimally run or usually run, you should check out their streams and their videos. I think they incorporate a lot of good stuff. Otherwise, speaking of Fanaat, you could just walk over to us both if you want to talk roleplay, open for discussion. As I said, we are both running dungeons, different systems. Actually, Neffy, tell me about why you like vampires so much.
Oh, people keep on asking. The vampires, I love D&D, first of all. I played D&D for quite a bit of time, and it's a cool game. But what drew me to vampires, other than, of course, the darkness of the world, the fact that all of the creatures are not good or bad. There are no paladins. Clerics are not good. Nobody is 100% pure, other than, I don't know, creatures like angels or something. But everybody is a shade of darkness, a shade of evil. Yeah. And with that, they have a true freedom on their own morality. So characters can choose to be... No, I'm a vampire, I'm evil, I have been cursed by a deity that exists in this world. Inside the world of darkness, God is real. I have been cursed with this curse, and I will be forever cursed, and my soul will never be free. But I can also be a nice person. So they can choose to, like, I don't know, save a child from a running car instead of gaining more power in the vampiric society. And at the same time, it's not a hack and slash game. We use the term hack and slash, or another amazing term, the murder hobos, for games where people just set out and they see things, they kill them. They see things, they kill them.
Classic.
And this is not possible in vampires, because the world is set with the idea that you have to be hidden from humans, right? Because you're vampires. And you cannot really be a murdering hobo. You have to use politics. You need other people, and you need this society in order to survive.
You actually have to uphold the masquerade, right? The masquerade points.
There are actually 7 covenants that you need to uphold in order to not be, flagged as a threat to society and be hunted down by everything that you see in your path. Which is, it is a very heavy thing, but it's also, to me, it is very interesting as well. And it's always very interesting to see how people are navigating around certain rules, because players don't really love having so many rules. So they always find creative ways to completely bend them and go around them.
Yeah.
I'll get a magical item that will cover my aura, so I can, kill another vampire and nobody will know. And it's this kind of like, you can do things as long as nobody knows. This is the kind of thing I love about vampires.
I guess so, yeah.
What do you prefer, D&D?
5th edition is really, really easy to get into. I can only recommend it for people that want to dip their toes into a roleplay system. It's really not that hard to set up, and it's really easy for people who want to narrate to get into. And it gives players a lot of, as you said, agency and narrative freedom. Concerning that, basically, I think in half an hour we're also doing the character creation workshop for 5th edition, so if you're interested in that, head on over. Else the next VOD will basically appear in the feed. And we talk about character creation in 5th edition. But for now, 5e, I think, is like the Tolkien classic, It's the fantasy setting that people are familiar with. And the popularized version, so to say. There are tropes you can play in, as well as settings that may be familiar to you. So it can be a lot of fun without having to engage in a lot of world building necessarily, or getting a grasp on.
I can give a little example for the core races. They're like elves, dwarves, gnomes, orcs, halflings, and humans, which is basically, if you have ever watched a Tolkien movie, you know all of these.
Exactly. There are 9 races in the standard edition, so... Yeah,
I think they're the half ones as well, right? Yeah,
the half and the half orcs and stuff.
Yeah. And of course humans. They also exist.
Humans exist everywhere, like a pest. Who needs humans in their roleplay system? It's way too overrated.
The whole world is full of them. And what really...
No joke, the humans of roleplay systems are the Super Mario of Nintendo games. I'm not even joking. Like, if you want to have the standardist, most, like... Doesn't care, it doesn't matter, I want to do everything race, you just pick human.
Yes. And also the humans that you meet along the path, they're usually the simplest creatures to communicate with.
Who knows?
They're usually raced with everybody else. I would say that I found it much more exciting to pick another race. I don't want to, sway anybody's opinion. I'm just saying my own. And one last bit about stories and settings is that the first thing that a game, any setting of game, will ask you to do is create your background story.
Yeah.
So in some games you roll dice to see your stats, in other games you get points and you distribute them around your stats. But in every game you need to find out who you are, where you're from, why you're doing what you're doing, your nature, your demeanor, the kind of character that you are, your character. And that is the first bit of creativity that people can give. It can be as simple as I'm a paladin, I just save the poor, or I am an evil creature, I want to kill everybody. And it can go into, cliches. Oh, somebody killed my father and I'm avenging, or I don't know, I'm trying to find this holy item, and go into more and more personal, complex, and interesting stories. So it's not only the setting that everybody agrees on, it's also the personal story that can be also, extremely personal. It can be only between the DM and the player, and they can have, their own little thing. So I'm on the opinion that it's always fun to put some effort into it and make it your own, make it cool. Give some, for example, give some mannerisms to the character. I always loved seeing people having accents with their characters. Of course, not all the time, because that's really tiring. But for example, in fights or whatever, it's always fun to see people giving real life to their character.
Yeah.
And to be able to recognize them, like in a crowd.
I guess, yeah, it's like tabletop as it in roleplay leaves a lot of room for improvement for your acting, which plays a detrimental role to the whole thing. Like, you can actually see difference between somebody who's more experienced in this kind of activity, in this hobby, than a beginner. Not to put any pressure on newcomers, it's totally normal to feel really uncomfortable when you're supposed to act on the spot or improvise, which, let's be real, is most of your character expression is just improvisation. So, like, the best characters I've seen personally evolve were the ones where they just had a basic gist of them and just went with the flow and just used some opportunities to hardline their character into, I don't know, a facet, so to say. So
yeah, there are characters that were played for long enough, and some talented people turn them into books at the end. Because it can create basically a hero story. You create a character that has some flaws and some some pluses and some minuses, and then through the story they either deteriorate or become a better person, and they usually do both.
Yeah.
Which is extremely fun. I think we have covered all of the basics of what RPG games are and how we play them. And I would really recommend to try and make a character with Leo later on the next workshop.
Yeah.
And of course, now the floor is open for questions, for anything that people might want to know. Also about how things are run in the Kelder, in Fanaat, but also about maybe their own games, or if they're thinking about joining. So I think we should leave the chat. I mean, the chat is always open for questions, but please add anything that you are having there.
Yeah, we just answered them on the stream. We're actually supposed to keep the stream running until 15:30, and then just go over directly into character creation. So, whatever.
Okay, so I think we have sped up a little bit. Then we can go and revisit some of the subjects that are interesting to us. Let's talk a little bit about systems.
Sure.
So, for example, I know that some people are playing Call of Cthulhu in the Kelder, right?
I think so, but at least I think the dungeons that we're playing, last time I heard about them, ended because, well, it's a system prone to wiping. let's say it like that.
Yeah, in that specific system in Call of Cthulhu, you're either going to get your character has two very distinct endings. The character will either go crazy and become a cultist, or die. There is no winning in Call of Cthulhu. But the way that, but once you accept that your character is going to either die or get crazy, you can get really creative with the ways that you will reach that point.
Yeah.
I personally really liked it.
Interesting enough is that Call of Cthulhu, actually, it's very good if your character is dumb.
Yes.
If they don't understand shit, then it's fine.
Basically, in Call of Cthulhu, you start as, I don't know, an investigator or anything, a person in the 1920s. And slowly through the stories, you find out more and more gruesome horror kind of information and books that people can read. And the more you read and the more you comprehend about it, the more you understand this kind of dark, horrible side of existence, and people get crazy from it.
It's a basic Lovecraftian, like the fear of the unknown. It's just more pinned upon one of the sea leviathans called Cthulhu. So make of that what you will. But it's really fun because it's not fantasy per se. It's you play in a modern setting, right? First published first edition in 1981, and I think you also play in that era. So you can actually walk around with a shotgun. That's, I think, fine.
Yeah.
Problem is you're shooting shit that nobody else sees, and tentacles everywhere, and yeah, the basic Lovecraftian stuff.
And the most of the things that you will fight are not gonna be killable with a shotgun.
I mean, it gives the illusion of safety, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To be carrying a shotgun. That, like, this kind of shit I wouldn't allow in 5th edition.
Well, there are certain ways you can actually level up technology enough to get a shotgun. I will not add oil to the fire here.
Yeah.
I understand putting limits. For example, in vampires, I have set a limit to how many Malkavians we can have in the party.
Yeah.
Because basically, there is one clan, one kind of vampire that one can be that has certain powers are extremely fun because they can tamper into people's madness, but they're mad themselves. And the amount of crazy people in a group, if it goes above maybe 2 of them, it's too
a healthy limit. There is a healthy limit to craziness. It's the same with 5th edition. There's a spellcasting class called a sorcerer, and the sorcerer has subclasses, so to say. They're not really subclasses, they're more origins, so where you draw your magical power from. And there's one subclass or origin that is basically the wild magic, the fan favorite wild magic, where if you are unlucky on your roll, you will have to roll on the on the wild magic search table, where basically just your magic goes out of control. And like the fucked up shit that happens is really
it's fun, but
there's
you
a surge.
no,
it's not fine. There's a surge that turns your sorcerer into a potted plant.
Oh, I remember somebody had that, and they were drawing a magic weapon. They were calling on a magic weapon, and a bouquet of flowers arrived.
Oh Jesus!
It was amazing. It was so much fun. But I see a question from Marina. It's like,
nice.
Will Fanaat open from the start of the course? I've seen the website that it was closed due to COVID-19, but I would be interested in joining the association.
So, as far as we know, the university currently runs the course of if you can stay at home, do it. If not, then, well, here is some safe rooms and some safe space. I can go on a limb and tell you right now, as my personal opinion, not the personal Fanaat, that probably we will have something of a more sharper measures in the next weeks, because I don't know if the university accommodated for the kick-in, but I think we will see some more cases because of the kick-in. But the way, to answer your question, the way it currently is right now is that Fanaat is not seen as an educational necessity. So we can't really access the Kelder, so the room where Fanaat is
It also has to do with the room setup.
Yeah.
So the room setup does not allow for space.
Yeah, we have like a ventilation system. It's in the cellar, and there's not a lot of room for safe spaces, so we can't really argue against that. But we are digital, well, because most of us are.
We're running our dungeons digitally. Like we stopped Vamps after the exams. We played one last time, and we're starting it again. And I'm pretty sure that all the other dungeons either meet outside of the Kelder, which of course it has a few minuses. You don't have the fancy dice and you don't have the fancy books with you, but I mean, we make it work. We have the books on our laptops, we have dice, or we have some app to do the rolling. So Astral is really good for that. And
Roll20. I run my dungeon on Roll20 and do voice and video over Discord, and it's been working good the last couple of months. So
the same setup, but with Astral instead of Roll20 works quite well. I think it is because Astral is accommodating vamps. I don't think that Roll20 has a vamp setting.
Really? Well, I don't really know. But well,
last
5th edition you can
checked,
basically run everywhere, so
yeah. It's the most basic one. Everybody's running on that, and then expands. It's very logical because it's the most sought out as well. People join it more. And generally, if you want to join and to join Fanaat, I would say that the Kelder is an amazing place to be most of the time, but I would not be deterred by the absence of the access to the Kelder, because we're still having a lot of fun outside.
Like Kelder is nice if you have like breaks or time between your lectures and seminars.
Yeah.
So just drop in and relax, and I don't know, write down some stuff you want
The
to
good
or
thing
play
is that-
Magic, but we don't have like daily life in university right now anyway, so
Well, Belletry is also in the Kelder. So for people that will be there for the next years when we will not have corona issues, there's a lot of books that one can read from Belletry, and a lot of people to, have a discussion or an argument, depending on the mood that day.
yeah, I hope we can like the Kelder opens again at the end of the year.
Okay, great. You're welcome, Marina. We also had some Pathfinder running, right?
You really want to get into Pathfinder. You really want to get into Pathfinder. I'll
why
pull up the character sheet of Pathfinder on the screen, and then you tell me again if this is a good idea.
Look, it's a system.
Alright, no, before you debate with me, just explain what Pathfinder is, okay? Because that's already a whole nother issue.
Well, Pathfinder, I am not going to claim that I'm having a lot of deep knowledge about Pathfinder. I will give a very, skin deep assessment of it. Well, it is a branch of D&D. It is very similar in a lot of ways, in the sense that you have similar creatures, similar settings, but it also has a little bit of a different system in order to run.
Yeah.
And in this kind of differences, people can have some opinions. Some people prefer 5e and they think it is simpler, it's more straightforward, the roles are more sensical to them because, I don't know, you can have your stats are growing more linearly, not exponentially, so it makes more sense to a lot of people. And a lot of people like Pathfinder for the extra freedom that it gives them.
No, I'm just gonna call it out how it is.
Pathfinder is breakable.
Pathfinder is basically, if you liked writing down stuff for your character and don't really have to get into roleplay. Okay, this is mean, but it's also kind of true, so Pathfinder is the right system for you. So, the way it worked was, back in the day when Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition was out, they wanted to migrate into the next generation, which was 4th edition, D&D 4th edition. The problem with 4th edition is that they reworked the magic system and the basic character progression system, as well as creation, that they just completely botched it for a lot of people who liked 3rd edition.
For anybody who doesn't know what botch is, basically you have a dice that it could be up to 10, up to 20, up to whatever. If you roll 1, you have failed in a spectacular way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to throw a rock. If I botch it, It's not only I didn't get my target,
Yeah.
I actually hit a friend of mine that is nearby.
So just to explain, for example, why a lot of people didn't like it in 4th edition, magic overall, like all presence, just was killed off. And to be able to cast magic, you would have to get out of dead magic zones, and to be able to cast divine magic, you would have to be next to your.
Basically, 4th
next to
edition
your
starts.
god.
Everybody agrees
Yeah.
with that.
It was
heard quite a bit of
painful.
opinions from a lot of D&D
It was
editions, but
painful
for
to
4,
play.
everybody agrees.
Yeah, it was painful to play. At least that was the consensus of a lot of people. So what's the people behind Pathfinder did, I think that's how it was, is they did the system that diverted in a different way from 3rd, which is 3.5. Then a lot of people came together and reworked this 3.5 system a lot more to eventually stand on its own to be called Pathfinder. So basically Pathfinder is something of a 4th generation D&D, but not D&D 5th edition. Pathfinder takes the whole micromanagement and microscaling. I'm not done! From 3rd edition and puts it on another level. So, as you can see, the character sheet I have right now for Pathfinder is put on the table.
Hello, bro.
Just to create a character in Pathfinder as an inexperienced person, let's just say fighter. Alright, fighter, the easiest class throughout all the systems. I'm ranting. I'm starting to rant. Takes so long to create this roleplay system. Okay, to be fair, or to just sum it up, Pathfinder, you have a lot of stats you can manage, which gives you a lot hardline approach to feel secure about in your character concepts, not as other roleplay systems. That's basically the advantage of Pathfinder. So Neffy, what do you want to say?
I was saying that there are a lot of opinions about Pathfinder. Very few of them are positive, admittedly. And also that if you have any more questions and you want to play something very specific, we're always open to trying new things. And they're always, and you can always run your own game. DMing is something that is very welcomed in the Kelder.
Yeah.
I joined last year and I immediately started a campaign as well. And it was very welcomed. It was, full. Everybody had fun. It's absolutely fine. And if anybody wants to have any more, questions about setting up a game, for example, or setting up a character, there are a lot of knowledgeable people that they can, ask and get the opinion of. And that is one thing that also helped me start my characters and at the same time start the campaign that I'm running now. So don't get shy with the Kelder. The Kelder is very open and very happy to help. Some people might get a little bit like Leo 5 minutes ago, but they do that in the best possible way and with the best possible attitude and intentions.
Let's say like that.
Yeah. It's always good to have people who know their shit.
Exactly. And as Neffy said, there's a lot of opinions about a lot of stuff, especially in nerd culture. And since we're all gamers, we all have a lot of experience about the stuff. And if you like to engage into debates, you're at the right spot, at least about that. Like, this was pretty opinionated, I give you that. But other people would have just completely went off the charts when mentioning another roleplay system. But that's the fun about it. We like to talk about it. There's a lot of discourse. I've had evenings where I just spoke with 4 people about the funny parts of different systems. It was a ton of fun. So yeah. I can just reiterate what you said. So
yeah. And there are always people that is going to understand your frustrations as well. So that's always good.
Ain't that the truth?
Yes. Well, what else? It would be
What?
Sorry, I have a really my head system is giving me a bad sound.
A butt sound.
Not a bad sound. It's
A buzz.
okay.
You good?
There was a buzz in my ears. No,
Okay.
I'm fine. I'm good. I'm very good.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
These are the systems.
also talking about player etiquette, if we have access to the Kelder, there are specific hours that we are, running games inside the Kelder. There are other rooms that you can have more privacy in case of loudness, because loudness can happen in a game. It's not a permanent thing, but usually people get worked up in the game. Solving mysteries and fighting monsters is an exercise.
Yeah.
And there are certain rules also about the Kelta itself, which is basically, put things where you found them, keep it clean. We don't cook in the Kelta. I don't know where we have that rule, but there must have been one reason at some point. There's a story behind.
No, that's actually because people brought these really elaborate, let's say, hot water picnics where they like heated so much cup ramen that it went out of hand. So that's why we don't have we have a no cooking rule in the in the
you cannot cook and eat. I read the rule and it's quite funny. There's some wording is important. That's one more thing when you're making your character, especially when you're homebrewing. I'm saying that from personal experience that sometimes some storytellers and DMs, I don't know who that could be, could have fun with your backstory. So if you want something to be in a specific way about your character, try your wording very well. So, and also one more cool thing about background stories, at least from my understanding, is to leave some serendipity as well. Like, have the things that you want to have in a certain way be in a certain way. Like, I don't know, I was born in the 1920s and I was a crook or whatever. I want these specific things to be like that for me. But you can leave like, okay, maybe my parents were having a second identity at some point in their life. You give a little bit of food for thought for the storyteller to elaborate on and surprise you. So a good balance of those two usually works extremely well.
Yeah, I guess the basic.
Actually, about the rule, Bram answered it. I'm not going to repeat. Continue.
This was, as I said, some people cook like whole meals, and Bram basically elaborated as like Martin.
No, continue.
Whole meal. Just imagine a portable cooker. You're there doing your dungeon, and some of you guys just whips out a portable heating plate, and he just goes. All right.
I think we have covered all of the basics. We even delved a little bit into character creation. I hope we didn't step too much into your preparation, man.
It's fine.
And generally, the doors are open. Not actually.
Not literally.
Figuratively, the doors are open for everybody to join.
Yeah,
and
I think we have a guest Discord set up for Fanaat. I'm not sure about that, but you also have a main server, so
and there's
just get
a
in contact and
server.
hop in. Like there'll be lots of people who will gladly welcome you and talk to you about some specifics. Yeah, speaking of specifics, you wanna go over to character creation or?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Just let me pull up everything. I just put up the screensaver for you guys, so you won't be able to see my shit on my desktop. Yeah, I prepared a presentation for this. Look at me, I'm so prepared.
Oh,
Oh.
you can see the DM prepared. You
Yes.
need to be prepared for
I am
everything, so people will
so
just completely
prepared.
demolish it and do something
Please
else.
don't tell the people that DMing is just 80% improvising.
80? My DM is 95% improvising. A mini rant about DMing.
Yeah.
There are times, like, give some slack to your DM. When you see them, it's a bit of a desperate state. Give them a little bit of slack, because there are times that I have spent like 5 hours with this elaborate thing, what is going to happen through the night and what times people will do what. So all of the world is set up to operate, so the characters can go and talk to anybody, and I know what everybody is doing. And they just leave the city. They just left.
Just fucked
Okay,
off.
we're gonna take a mini trip today.
I guess we could just fuck off then.
Okay, then we need to find things for this new city. That city. If I was like a renderer in a traditional, online game, that city was a ghost. It was empty. We just had to,
I have
to
not
build
prepared
it
this.
as they were talking.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
know the feeling.
your DM will be very knowledgeable and will always know what to do. So trust them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let me just set up everything so we can start talking about this stuff. Since I did not finish everything, I have to improvise. Ha! Talking about improvisation.
In typical fashion.
In typical D&D fashion, you got it. So let's take a look at this.
I think that the demon is a bit of a long story right now. Yeah, there's sometimes that you make a non-player character or NPC and you say, okay, we're gonna have this to appear just as an effect, a flashy thing, and then somebody goes and befriends it and you're like, okay, now we need to work this thing into the story somehow. Okay, guys.
Alright.
We have a new friend now.
Yeah. Let's just start this more or less on time.
Yeah.
The second workshop today, or well, the second program, so to say, is character creation. We prepared Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for this, since, well, it is one of the most easiest to get into, as I just told you. We were debating whether to, Neffy debated whether to put in Pathfinder character creation just to spite me. But then again,
Me?
the time limitations were, yeah. So, yeah. Any thoughts before we start into this, Neffy? Character creation 5e. What's actually like the first time you create a character in 5th edition? Was that the campaign we played together?
No, I created the first character in 2011. But was it 5e? I'm not 100% sure. It could have been a third. So 5e it could have been the time that we played together. Because I was playing the 3rd edition before.
Oh, you played the 3rd? Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
I was playing a character that was a shaman, and she got a huge tiger that she could actually ride into places. It was a very, very, very. Let's say that I was playing with teenagers, so I just made that my character will wear a bikini at all times, even in full armor. And I got a tiger. It was not the best thing to do on both sides, I have to say. It was like, it was weird. But the tiger was extremely cool.
Alright.
Riding onto a tiger.
Riding on a tiger. So, I'll actually grab some water. I'll be back in a minute. So let's get this set up.
Yeah. Obviously, it was not it must have been the 3rd edition that we played, Robert. The 5e indeed got out in 2014. So it's a more recent one. Okay, so Soon we will start talking about the character creation, and maybe I can just go on with. Oh, maybe one thing that we can do is have, since the people responsible for Fanaat are here on the chat, we can have them tell us what kind of games are run currently, which settings are run currently, so people can know about it already. So if Rover or Bram or Kiona can tell us what kind of games are run now in the Kelder, or if we know which games are open. Of course, we can find that on the Discord server as well, and that is always a good point for information because people usually reply fast. It would be also nice to have an answer here if we got it. Otherwise, I know that there is a pirate setting, which is quite cool. I've heard the stories pretty much secondhand in the Kelder, and it was quite fun. Vamps is running, and I know that Leo is running a 5e campaign. So there must be another 3 or 4 games that are unidentified currently. And in a couple of minutes, our friend Leo will be back for the character creation. In the meantime, any questions are welcomed.
So, well then, I'm gonna jump into it.
Sure.
We
did all of the basics so far, so go on.
Alright, so the character creation 5th edition. Some prior thoughts going into this is we're probably skipping over a lot of stuff that is not important unless you get involved into the game directly. Specifics, I'm talking passive perception, proficiency, the languages, all the inventory management shit. That's not important for this right now, so we just skim over it and then I'll leave the elaborating for you, DM, to do.
Yeah, this is an introduction,
yes.
Right? We're not gonna go into too many details.
Yeah. Other than that, I'll just roll this in. Character creation is more or less, let's say it how it is, the first step onto actually playing the game, because you have to have a pawn, so to say. You have to get involved into the story, and thus it is vital that you do it. Of course, you can't just jump into it with a husk. Well, some people do. They just jump in with stats, so to say, and then make their character as they go. People who play a lot and know how this works can do it, but it is always just better to prepare a character. Also, it's more fun just to think of what you will be playing in terms of the role that you want to capture in the setting.
And also in 5e that is necessary because it is not an environment that you're used to. In Vamps, for example, you can start by being yourself and you will become a vampire in the game.
Well,
but for something that is fantasy, that is medieval, I mean, you have to introduce your character to the world somehow.
You're playing an epic, as I said, you're playing an adventurer. So you will have an impact on the world, so you can't go nilly-wally. Background characters are not meant to be played. That's how it is. So you will have to get ready for heroics. So you have to come up with a solid foundation for a hero. So it is. Or an anti-hero, if that's your thing. Starting off, of course, with creation. You have an idea in your mind. So let's say this is what it looks like in your head. The next character you want to play. The really cool guy with the 200 swords and armor dude. Fighterman is his name. That's how he looks like in your head. Though it is a pen and paper game. that the dungeon master as well as the game itself needs to be able to handle your vision, so to say. So what you actually end up with is this. That's the character sheet. That's how characters are created in 5th edition. You have basically a sheet where a lot of information is projected. You don't have to really look at that too long. I explain all the details later. But this is basically how it looks. The first page is the most important page of your character, as it gives a broad overview over what you're doing with it or how you envision it. So you will be putting or trying your best to focus this part, this guy, onto this little sheet of paper here. And to do that, we start from the bottom. Some disclaimers. Oh, actually, let me just grab that thing. Wait. For a base D&D, this thing here is your best friend. That is the Player's Handbook of 5th edition. It is a buy I would definitely recommend, even though there's digital copies of this. Also for this presentation we're using this as the basis because, well, the races are playtested and balanced in this, and also are more or less the official races. There are of course other modules for this. For example, Aberon introduces a lot of playable races, as well as Rollers Guide to Monsters in 5th edition. But this is about the basics of it. You can also, if the Kelder, I think apart from the Kelder having to open, you can also look at these through the Bell Tree system, right? Can you actually rent these? You know this, Neffy?
I know that we were not allowed to take these books outside of the Kelder. We couldn't get game materials outside of the Kelder because I think that these belong to Fanaat and not to the Blade Tree.
Okay.
But maybe Rover can enlighten us.
Yeah.
No, we cannot take them.
Yeah. But basically, the gist of it is that you can look up all the stuff that you need. Yeah. As I said, we'll be focusing on this. So let's jump into the basics. First off, one of the more foundational choices of your character are, of course, the races. Neffy, what's your favorite race? Starting off controversial, guys. What?
Half elves.
Ah, come on.
I love elves.
Really? These half-bred mongrel mutts?
Yes, I like them.
You like the bonus on charisma and the not fitting into everywhere, yeah.
Yes, because they might not be able to fit anywhere, but they are likable by everybody in some weird way. That I don't know how that works.
They're weird but likable. Sounds like you, Neffy.
They're a little bit like nomads. They're a little bit like expats. And I think that this is really connecting to all of us in a level, because at least the people who left home to study abroad, you're not fully local here, and when you go back, you're not, fully the same as you were, the same person that everybody expected. So the mods are good. The mods are fun.
Yeah, half-elves is one of the player races. In 5th edition, they're basically a half-breed between humans and elves. So average mediocrity paired with elvish superiority is basically superior mediocrity. This is how they're more or less described in the player's handbooks. So you can see some of the available player races here. These are 7, there are 2 missing, which is the Dragonborn and another which I cannot remember. Tiefling. As you can see, there's obviously a difference in height, build, strength, the like, which will definitely impact your character development. Sorry?
Smartness?
Yeah, well. Int is a dumpster in 5e and convince me otherwise. But depending on how you envision your character idea, this is the basic outline. There's also a good summary of the races. These are the 9 races we were talking about, which are introduced in the player's handbook. The basic the basic gist of them is dwarves dig, gnomes tinker, tieflings burn, half-elves have double the fun. Humans just go everywhere. They're like the plague. Elf just they don't die. Halfling they eat everything. Half-orcs are tough, and the dragonborns are proud of their stuff. But as I said, it is the basic fantasy trope. If you imagine a lot of the rings paired with a little more demons in them to compensate for the tieflings, then you're not far off.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why people like it so much. It's very, very. It is spectacular, but it's also familiar.
Exactly. But it wouldn't be a roleplay system without specifics. So here we go. This is actually what it means to play one of these races. We have just the major things, like the obvious things: age span, weight, size, and speed, movement speed. As you can see, there's definitely a height difference between a lot of the races. So there is definitely a difference between playing a halfling and a dragonborn. Also, apart from the physique, also all the races have certain traits. You can see this in the second tier line. These common traits affect your gameplay and skill expression, so apart just from giving you speed and height for imagining the person, this is actually the impact they have on how they develop during the game and how they behave in the system. Some of them also have sub-races. Elves are like, they have like 3 or 4 more unofficial stuff, so there's a lot of opportunity to flavor your race pick, even like for example for halfling or all that stuff. So you can see that down here. If you want to zoom in, go ahead. I think I can actually zoom in myself and show you some of the stuff. So you can see that it has an impact on some attributes as well as some languages, and for the sub-races you can see it's kind of dependent on the biome as well as what's the defining trait of the sub-race is, so to say. That's not too important, but just that you're aware of it. So let's say you want to make the fighter man that we talked about previously on the slide. You would obviously choose human at this point. So you're boring like that and get the all-round package. Humans are basically in the system of 5e assumed to be everywhere. That's why they're hard to pin down. So they get a little bit of everything. That's the idea. And it's perfect for self-insert, because then you can decide what you actually want to do by just more flavoring them. So you're not as forced to play certain classes maybe as you would be otherwise. Then again, there can be a debate on race class combinations, but we get into this later. After you've decided your race, the next step is choosing the profession of your adventure, also called the class. People go on adventures for a reason, and the people that go on adventures usually have means of not dying. At least that's the assumption. So right from the get-go, at level 1, you have something that makes you special. Which is fine. There's still stuff that can kill you. It's just the basic RPG understanding that you dive into it, and bam, you're a fighter now, for example, or a paladin, or whatever you like. I like the paladin. It's one of my favorite classes because it feels very satisfying to smite beings out of existence. What's your favorite class, Nephi?
I like to homebrew stuff, so I usually get clerics and make my own god. Or I also love druids. I'm not pinning down to one class. I like to have a variety.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Classes don't pin you down on one class necessarily. We skim over multi-classing in just a bit. But yeah, you can basically do these careers, these adventurous careers, how you like. There's some prerequisites, but essentially you can just really go nuts on these. These classes have a lot of expression on themselves. They may be stylized in some cases and may also have subclasses, so you can even flavor them further. To sum them up really quickly, this is the basic gist of them. There's Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. These 12 classes are more or less divided into hybrids, melees, and casters. There's some further division there, but they fall into the basics of this. Funnily enough, they're a lot of fun. I think all of the classes have something that others don't and fulfill a certain fantasy. So it doesn't really matter which one you choose. You may think that some are a little more better tuned than others, but then again you still have something exclusive to your class and can do things that others don't.
And also, there are different ways to go about the problem, right?
Yeah.
So you can always pick the class that you want to experiment with yourself. It does not have to be something that tunes with you, but it might be something that you want to, I don't know, you want to find a way to train yourself to talk people into doing things, for example, to, you know, or to having a specific set of rules for yourself. It can be anything.
Like the basic consensus is that 5e did a more or less good job at balancing these classes. There are some concerns for balancing power creep and the like, if you want to get technical, but what they more or less achieved is that it's not a huge difference. And the most people I talked to were rather satisfied with the vision and how the class would accommodate them for the vision they had. So if either of them sounds interesting to you, there's a lot of opportunities to lose yourself into creating characters according to these classes. You can just go nuts on these. But as with any other roleplay system, these actually not only flavor but also have specs. This is a little more detailed basic overview, so it's still not hard stats, but you'll be able to grasp most of the classes if you look at these. So looking for example at the Barbarian, you can see that here's rather high points in defense and strength stats. That's because Barbarians get the highest hit points of all the classes in the game, are melee focused and can take a lot of damage because, well, they don't really give a shit.
They're barbarians.
Yeah,
they're exactly what we
They're...
have in our minds for barbarians.
I just want to point out that by the rule system, it is accommodated for barbarians to go in combat shirtless.
No!
Yes, indeed. Other than that, you could, for example, choose Bard, which is a heavily roleplay focused class, social encounters. If you have a Bard and there's a lot of social encounters, you're gonna have a blast. Because these guys are so mean to other people in social encounters. They get really high deception stats, they get a lot of spells that accommodate for their social nature, and it is, I'm gonna tell you right now, it is a class that accommodates you for fucking around. That's basically it. So
it's also a class that accommodates you for having a creative solution to problems.
I meant that in both sentences. In both senses. Okay. Fucking around
okay.
as
okay.
yeah, okay. It is a fun class. It may not provide much in combat, as you can see in the stats, but if you are more of the social butterfly, then Bard is definitely your class.
As a Bard, you're not supposed to be in a fight. Basically.
Yes, you basically support others to do the fighting for you because you don't want to get your clothes dirty.
Except if you're fighting against the magic welder and you cast silence on them.
Well, yeah,
That's
you're
the only thing
spellcaster.
you can do.
Speaking about spellcasters, there are also some classes in D&D that dabble heavily into them. The sorcerer being one of them. As you can see, he has high stats in magic, only to be rivaled by wizard. Sorcerer and wizard especially have access to a lot of powerful spells. With the sorcerer being able to tweak those spells, while the wizard can accommodate for a lot of spells. He can absorb basically some spells from his surroundings, giving the rules applied to his class. The warlock is a little more niche. He draws his powers from something else, but that may dim his power a little, as well as his access to spells. But it gives way more opportunity for roleplay and accommodating for a certain playstyle. That's the spellcasters. There's also rogues, rangers, and the like. There's some hybrid classes. Rangers, for example, is a hybrid class between rogue and druid. These all have their own special shtick, which is not easily explainable on this sheet, so we just continue on. Going with Fighterman, of course you're choosing Fighter. As the name says, you dude who with sword whacks stuff till it dies. That's good. That's also totally viable in D&D 5th edition. There's literally 2 classes that only focus on one thing, that is punching / striking.
Slashing.
Yeah, exactly. Fighter and monk, you just hit stuff, it dies. That's fine. Nice.
Well, monk is also following some sort of covenant, right?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
Next step would be fleshing out what your character is actually meant to represent. What's your favorite alignment, Neffy?
I'm gonna be super basic, chaotic neutral.
Jesus.
I like to have my own set of rules. My characters usually have a defined set of rules that they're going by. But it's separate from, I don't know, being good or being bad.
Right.
What did you have? With Paladin, I guess good something?
No. I actually do think that chaotic good is my favorite alignment. I find it really difficult to play. I have a lot of respect for people who pull it off, but the basic gist is that you act on your own without regard to any codes and still come out on top at the end. So I really like that. What's your favorite background for a character?
I'm usually creative with my background, so I don't have a favorite. I just make up a story for the background. It's a unique. It depends on what I would like to play. The last time we played together, I wanted to play an eccentric person who feels high and mighty, but he's not mean. He's not. He was not like. He was not. I don't know. Evil. He was just high and mighty. So I decided to craft somebody who had a lineage and was like,
a noble. That's a noble.
Yeah. But that's not always. That's not always my favorite.
It's basically a setup for your character expression. What these two are. They can affect your gameplay to some degree, but they have a lot more flavor in them, character-wise, as in personality. Basic gist of them is this. You can see the backgrounds that are mentioned in the player's handbook and what they do. The advantages as well as the perks you get from them are more or less inherent or obvious given what they say. So for a sage, for example, will probably have some more knowledge regarding magic, or a hermit may know something about the environment or may know how to survive on their own. The alignment, put into better terms, is basically
code of conduct.
The duality of your character regarding a law and the ethics. So lawful, neutral, and chaotic describes whether your character adheres to a set of laws or rules, doesn't particularly care about them, or actively goes against them. While, of course, good, neutral, and evil describe whether your character is altruistic, egoistic, or completely egoistical. That is the basic gist of it. People will try to make it more complicated, didn't understand what this thing is meant to be. It's just to give a condensed overview of how your character behaves. Of course, this system will not be able to express perfectly how your character behaves, but I think it is very easy to essentially pin down a character when it comes to alignment.
And it does not have to confine the character within that alignment.
No.
And a completely egotistical creature is capable of empathy.
Yeah.
So you don't. It's not because you're like a chaotic, evil character you can never do anything good.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing good just for yourself. That's the fun part about it.
Yeah, but as you said, people are stretching these specific rules quite a bit. So
one of the key features of being evil, according to this alignment system, is that you're putting yourself over others. So purely egotistical, destructive to the environment. That is what evil essentially means. It's not really complicated. But continuing on, of course they do affect your gameplay to a little degree. First up, since we talked about alignment already, there's no restriction for the race or class. Just keep in mind that your DM might hold you to the vision you have given him. If the change is not natural or not foreseeable at all. So if you say I'm chaotic neutral, for example, so you don't want some personal use as well as the betterment of everybody, so altruistic egotism, and you don't really give a damn about any law or code of conduct, then you should play as such and not go around killing everybody. Which chaotic neutral is infamous for. It's fine if you choose your alignment, if you change your alignment later on. There may be some roleplay reasons as to why. It's just, yeah, don't lie to yourself.
No, people might be forced to change their alignment.
Exactly.
So a chaotic neutral character who goes on and kills everybody and hogs the loot and steals and stuff, they will turn evil at the end. It is just the natural progression of the character through your gameplay.
Yep.
So let's say that your character is a doll and you just change it, you remodel it by playing it.
Yep. The backgrounds we mentioned earlier do impact on your skills. You can see these on the left. So athletics, for example, which is a skill, is impacted by sailor or soldier since they're physically active and the like. It's basically a rough description of your background, which you can flavor further, and how it impacts the character expression gameplay-wise.
You haven't told us what your favorite is.
Yeah, I can do that. Fireman would of course be a soldier, since these character traits or skills do align very well with the fighting gameplay-wise. My favorite background, it's really difficult, but I like the urchin one. I don't play a lot of dexterous characters. As you can see, it weighs heavily into pickpocketing and stealth. But I just like something about the rising of somebody who is falling to from the rising from poverty of a hero. I just like something about that story. I don't know why. It's just I naturally gravitate to, I don't know, an orphan that just fucks up dragons. I don't know. I like it.
Okay.
Fireman is of course lawful good because humans as self-insert playing D&D are more or less lawful good. That's you have a basic like the inherent understanding of law that you deal with in daily life, as well as how you surround yourself with people and how you deal with them, more or less lets you gravitate towards lawful good if your character is a self-insert. Which I'll not say is everybody, but there are also people that tend to just hang or go loose, go nuts with their hidden psychopathy and just and just go completely chaotic evil. Yeah,
Oh, that's so
I've had
cute.
that. Like totally normal, I guess.
Doesn't have to be too hidden.
To go over this once more again, things to consider while choosing your race, class, background, and as well as alignment are, of course, the setting, as well as system you're playing, the story, so the module that the Dungeon Master will run if it's homebrew or pre-written, as well as your personal biography. Keep these in mind. If you do a character, there may be some incompatibilities, but don't stress too much over them. Of course, class, you should look at them, how they progress, so whatever you envisioned also works out at the end, and you don't have to be like, oh damn, doesn't look like this is working out. Also make sure that whatever you envision is also fun for you. The gameplay loop fits what you expect and what you would like to see, so that you can stick to your character and don't lose fun further down the road. So Fighter-Man, now we have him outlined. He is human, he's a fighter, he's a soldier as a background, and he's lawful good. He's basically the typical hero, so you'd say. He rose, I don't know, he fell in a battle against the Demon Lord and then survived by a slim margin, and now he's on a retribution arc because he failed people, and thus he wants to save the continent from being taken over from an evil force. Let's say it like that. Of course, as I've mentioned earlier, you have to put this thing on paper, because you, as well as other players and the Dungeon Master, have to know on a gist, on a first look, what you're able to do in the system. This is where the system comes into place and its rules, so you can incorporate the vision into actually playing out. 5e is a good overview. It gives a rather condensed as well as informative overview of your character. There may be some stuff lost, but I think it strikes a good balance. So this is how Fireman's sheet may look like. I'm gonna explain different components of the sheet right now, so we can go over these. These are the main attributes. This is the main gist that makes up your predator. It's strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Everything that is dependent on character expression as well as skill dependencies in D&D 5e almost always falls onto these main attributes. These are the keystones that rule every ability, skill, whatever in the 5th edition, but we get into that later. Further on you can see the skills as well as the proficiencies, which basically means every practical ability in 5th edition, as well as how your character handles them and if they are probed in them, so to say. Oh, there you can see all the MISC proficiencies, so whether your character is able to equip certain armor, and whether he can speak language. Here you can see a combat overview, which includes your armor stats, your HP, and your attacks. Down there you can see some inventory as well as your money. There is your summary of your roleplay loop, and over here you can see the class abilities. That was the short gist of the sheet. We go into these deeper, but we streamline them massively because it takes a lot of time to explain them in more detail. So, Navi, what is the highest stat you've ever rolled for your character, and what is the lowest you've ever rolled?
I have rolled a 3.
You've rolled a 3?
3 aces. Don't laugh.
No way! How?
I did. Okay. It was 3d6, and I rolled 1 on each one. So it was 3.
Oh my god.
And that was wisdom. So my character was actually intelligent, but very unwise. So she was very easily fooled, but in an actual conversation she could like read books and understand languages, but she was very naive. So we decided to play her in an extremely innocent and naive way. She didn't understand how the world was playing.
That's insane.
And the highest one I've rolled 18. And that was Constitution, so I put it on a cleric. That was really fun.
Nice. You can see I rolled this character that we're going to continue. I rolled Fighterman. Normally you roll in the ways I've described here. It is either 46, which is the most common, drop lowest, or 3d6 if you want to go hardline, because you don't have a joker there. And you can end up with a 3, like that.
Yeah.
Or you have a point buy system, which is complicated, and I'm not going to elaborate on that. Or standard array, which means pre-written stats you can just put in there, like nilly-willy, however you want to, and that's it. One thing that's affected or affecting your main attributes is, of course, your race. In case of Fighterman, he is a human, so all of his attributes get a need +1. So for Fighterman, I rolled 15, 7, 13, 11, 39, and 46 drop lowest, which I just sorted however I wanted on the right and put a +1 on everything, and there we go. We got our main attributes. These are the stats that make up Fighterman. Overall, I think the lowest stat I ever rolled was 46 actually. A 46, a 4. I rolled a 1, 1, 1, and a 2. And the highest was 18. The highest I ever rolled was 18, which I capped into a 20.
But it will happen at some point.
Yeah.
And it's always fun to not really, throw away the character sheet right away because you rolled the 3, but, try to play it into the character and see how it will work out.
Yeah. You could argue that there are some stats which are really detrimental for you to have high. Constitution, for example, I would not recommend for newcomers to start on low. In my opinion, a good dump stat, like a lower stat for newcomers, and that's my personal advice, is, well, intelligence and charisma. I actually do think it makes a lot of sense for your character to have low charisma if you're starting out new.
The idea being that you're not gonna play a lot anyway, that you're not gonna talk a lot anyway.
Yeah, so that you're not proficient in social encounters. Only problem with that is that a lot of classes are dependent on the charisma stat, especially the spellcasting ones. So, yeah.
But I would not recommend the spellcasting on a newcomer either. I'm just saying.
Yeah. There's, like, with the mental attributes, so intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, there's a lot of debate to be had over whether it is effective or which one is not important. But as Nefi said, that it's a lot of fun to roleplay these, because they directly affect your
We have an example from Patrick. One guy rolled a 3 on a 46 drop lowest, and he put it on charisma, so he was an elf, but nobody could believe it because he was too ugly.
Nice. Oh yeah, good that you mentioned that. I forgot to explain these basics. So strength and dexterity, how agile and how strong is your character. Constitution is how buff or tough your character is.
How much damage you can take before you die.
The mental attributes, so intelligence, wisdom, charisma, are a little more funnier, have a lot more nuance to them. Intelligence basically describes your basic learning ability as well as how fast you understand the grasp of things. It also describes how good you are with an overall knowledge of facts, but not to say common sense. Wisdom, on the other hand, describes motives of experience, so stuff that you've already seen, as well as your attunement to your surrounding world. So it actually affects how good you are how good you're able to see things or hear things, and how you perceive the world around you. Charisma I really like as a stat, because it's really nuanced in 5e. It describes the strength of your character. It doesn't necessarily describe your looks, which of course is affected by it, or the other way around, your looks maybe affect charisma, but it describes how strong you are in character, which I think actually describes the real life charisma better than what most people think. Because
I would agree on that. True, because it's basically charisma does not have to do only with how beautiful you are. There are beautiful people who are despicable to be around. Right?
Yeah, or you don't see as very charismatic. It also makes a lot of sense roleplay wise. For example, the Warlock, which is in a deadlock with his patron, where he gets his powers from, gets stronger the more charisma he has. Which makes sense if you think about it, because the strength of his character provides him with more opportunity to wrangle with the patron for more power. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I like the stat a lot, and it has a lot of nuance to it. There a lot of thought went into this, you can tell. So continuing on, because we have to hurry. These numbers translate into certain modifiers, which I'm gonna say this right now. It doesn't really matter which way around you write these. You can either write +3 and 16 in here, or the other way around. Just be aware that there's a lot of strong opinions on this. But the important part about these stats is the modifier. So you can see here how these scores translate into modifiers. These will affect your skills as well as everything you do, which has to do with either strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma.
Basically, anything that you do, you need to make a roll. And these things will either work with you or against you on the outcome of that roll.
Yep.
Because everything has the sense of luck in it. Yep. It's not that you do something and because you're good at hackling, you will always be hackling.
Yep.
You know.
It's just that there's more reason to believe that you're able to succeed this.
Yes.
There you go.
You have more chances. It stacks the deck on your favor.
Speaking about skills, this is how it looks. We won't get too deep into these, but you can see behind them written are the main attributes that affect them. So you just put in the modifier plus a modifier that is depending on your level, which is proficiency. I will not touch on this, but the basic gist you have to know is you put in here everything with the modifiers wisdom. So if you have a +2 in wisdom, you just put in +2 in perception. So you have a +2 in perception on rolls on perception. Easy, really easy. If you are trained in this, which is called proficiency, you can basically over the course of your adventuring put in the experience you have gathered and add them to the skill. That's what proficiency is. Proficiency is just dependent on your character level, and the longer you've been traveling and the more you've been leveling up, the more experience you can put into the skill. Easy. So, at the end it looks like this. You have over here all of the skills that have the modifiers according to the attributes of Fighterman, as well as you can see some proficiencies that he's taken. So, insight, intimidation, and you add the modifiers onto them of the character level, which is 1. Proficiency bonus for level 1 is 2, so 2 plus the main attribute modifier equals the modifier you have on the skill. So every skill check you can see on these skills. There's also something called resistances, which is even easier. You just put in the proficiency I just mentioned, as well as the attribute, onto the stats, and if there's a threat that's threatening your character in this particular stat, so for strength it would be a grapple, then you roll a saving throw or resistance to this effect and see how you perform. Easy. That's your character expression in a nutshell. All of these skills fall into these categories. All of what your character does, your practical abilities fall into these categories. And this is how the 8 attributes as well as your specialization translates into these. I should mention that your class as well as your backgrounds also give you extra proficiency, so they enable your character to put his experience into these skills. That's what proficiency describes. So, for example, the soldier background gives you athletics and intimidation, I think. So you can add your experience bonus, your proficiency bonus on there. That's all you need to remember. It sounds hard, but it's rather easy. Other than that... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Usually you get used to it on the first game.
Yeah. These are the basics for creating a character, and I will stop here for the sheet, because everything else, it is explained in the handbook, rather written concisely, and there's a lot of help online. I'll point you to some other channels that, like for example YouTube channels that have done really well on this, so give me a second here. Also, I want to take this time to actually say that the D&D 5 community concerning inspiration and character creation is amazing. There's a lot of material you can draw from.
You can make anything, and if you thought about it, somebody already has done it.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, you need some table or something to help you in creating a character, you can just look it up. I recommend for some fun and for some idle getting into D&D, JoeCat. He has a lot of crap guides to D&D, which basically describe the races, the alignments, and the classes we just described in a good gist as well as a fun manner. If you want a more drawn-out approach, XP to level 3 has also tutorials on the classes in his, as you can see here, how to play playlist. You can see Rogue, Barbarian. Basically describes a more in-depth and gives an overview of the class progression. Anything else? There's also the Dungeon Dudes I can recommend, which also give videos on how the class behave in 5th edition, as well as some more opportunities and good character ideas. That is the basic gist of it. Other than that, we can just talk about where we go from here. So, oops, sorry.
Well, at this point, to mention that Rover answered our question. At the moment, there are 4 or 5 Pathfinder games. 2 of the dungeons are still looking for members, and 2 D&D 5e campaigns, 1 Vampire the Masquerade, and a good number of dungeons that play regular. So they play different systems. From going on from here, just to not forget.
So, yeah, these are the dungeons we offer in the Kelder. This is the end product of a character created in 5th edition. This is how it looks like. There's also an inventory list as well as a spell list. These are technicalities for classes, so I will not mention them here. But basically, this is the gist of it. You can see on the left side the sheet I've been talking about the last couple of minutes. But on the right side is where the fun begins, so to say. On the left side you see the gameplay technicalities of your character and how you want to proceed with him. On the right side you can see the background. And this is actually the last point we want to touch on, the background writing for your character. Neffy, you have some background writing tips?
Usually get a very simple beginning. So when you're talking about war, don't talk about the entire mechanics of the war, but focus on, a little destroyed doll half burned on the side of the street. That's exactly how I would say you should approach your character. Trying to make a crazy wizard, you should just try and think about them, how they would behave on a very small, simple encounter. And then write the background that would justify that. That is my process usually.
Yeah. The way I do it is I have an idea for a certain class and character combination, and I basically do it retrospective. So I first have an idea, and then I outline how I accommodate this idea in the background. The best I could tell you is that there's a lot of approaches to backstory. One I unanimously agreed on, though, is don't write too much. Depending on your DM, some like it. I'm actually in opposition of what I just said. I like to read longer backstories, but my condition for this is if you're experienced in the system. A lot of one of the most common errors is that you write a backstory and you've already written the epic for your character, which is a paradox because you're just starting out. You can't be a dragon slayer at level 1. I'm sorry, this is not how this works. So actually you kind of forced to not write a lot since your character has not done a lot yet. They can't.
Well, you can write the things that your character tried to do and failed, and then now they have a reason to go and try again. So it can be the second chance. That is one arc that a lot of people choose. Or you can also go with a young person, say my character is like 15 years old, and write the story of a 15 years old that will end up being a soldier.
Yeah. So I think I watched a good video on this, and the basic gist of it is that you have 3 types generally most played in for characters, and it is the veteran, the prodigy, and the gimmick. So the veteran is something that is who has already experienced something and is now trying again, which works best if you start at level 3, for example. That's a really good fit for a veteran. The prodigy is someone who sets out on an adventure, who is, as I just said, becoming an adventurer by some miracle is granted epic powers. And the gimmick is, well, a gimmick character. So a background really is
I love the
necessary
gimmick
for them.
characters. Gimmick characters are amazing.
Yeah, they don't provide a lot of for backgrounds and roleplay, but you can make it so later on. Like,
I would disagree with that. I think gimmick characters can have a background, but anyway, it's details. Just
one of the
details.
things I can say though is D&D 5e is one of the roleplay system that perfectly accommodates for people who want to play gimmick characters. It works out. It really does work out. There is, for example, let's say you're playing, I don't know, a lizard who loses his tail all the time and then uses it as a weapon to whack people with it. That works. No problem with that. You can do that in 5e. No shit. You just have to spec into the certain parts and then there you go. Now I have a lizard who rips like his tail off every fight and just whacks people with it. Works, and it deals damage, and it's maybe even good. That's the fun part about it. There's no limitations to this. As long as you're creative and try your best to make it work, I am of the opinion that you're gonna have a blast role-playing gimmick characters. But other than that, I said it's already a lot of freedom with your background. Just don't write too much. One thing also that ties into the point I just said with don't go in with a pre-written adventure is don't be too stuck up on your character vision. The DM is not there, and the others, for that matter too, are not there for you to just tell your story that you already have in your head. If you want that, go write a book. Yeah, sorry. Like,
well,
you can talk to your
basically,
DM.
you're all telling the story together.
Yes.
And it's not a place that fits a lot of egotism. It is a place that fits teamwork, and it's a environment that is harboring teamwork, because your character, you're not gonna have a lot of fun playing alone. It's not a computer game.
All right, Patrick, that's a good point you're asking there, because I was gonna go over there. This character sheet that you see right here is actually created with a program I use often. It's I think it's an open source program done by one guy, and it is called the Aurora Character Creator for 5th edition. It is really easy to get into. It accommodates for creating a new character. This is, for example, the startup startup screen, excuse me, where you just click on create character, and then you can enter everything you want in there. Let's say just go this. It loads up an environment for you to design one. So there you go. And then you go step by step as we've just described. Choose a race, choose a class, choose a background, go about your ability scores, languages, proficiencies, and feats. Everything that is contained as explanation is also displayed on the right, so you basically have an ingrained material already on the side. That's the builder I recommend for people who want to experiment and dabble a little before they jump into a dungeon. I guess I can pull up a character I already did later on, but if you jump into a dungeon, one recommendation I can give is that you definitely talk to your DM about creating a character, and then create one together with the assistance of the source material. Because there's a lot of tables in there you could use, a lot of assistance, a lot of tips that I wrote into this book. Also, the Dungeon Master's guide can help you with that. And together with the Dungeon Master, you can also already set up the character and his potential development, and you will be able to make sure that what you envision is also incorporated to the campaign. That's one of the major advantages, and I recommend it to everybody that they set up the character in the campaign together with the DM. That's also my personal wish that people do that, because I did that with my players and we had a blast.
That is an 100% perfect, the first and foremost, the most best tip that you could have given is that. It also makes sure that your DM knows a lot about your character and they understand how to incorporate their nuances into their story.
Yeah. Just explore Aurora by yourself. The guy who does it is actually right now looking for a little support and maybe to go official with the program. So I cannot recommend this enough. It's a really good program. There's a lot of third-party material as well as opportunity to homebrew in this thing. So just go nuts with it. I won't go into detail, but I can only recommend this. Other than that, you can go vanilla and just go D&D 5e sheet. There's the Adventurers League official D&D 5e character sheet, which you can download, and it has fillable brackets. So you can just type in everything that you've done prior and just print it out, and there you go. You're set with your character. The last character I did together with a friend, I did it on a post-it note. So as long as you have everything in your head, which I do, you could just do it on the fly. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, that's basically everything. Are there some technicalities or issues that you still have? Just post them into the FAQ, and Neffy and I will do our best to answer this. We'll stick around for, I don't know, 15 minutes, and then we'll probably jump out. Any afterthoughts, Neffy? You want to say something else?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything. Good job.
Thanks. Thanks for the assistance.
Well, I was mainly here to distract.
I mean, that's fine. I spent a lot more time than you with the system, so of course I would know more about it.
I think it also has to do with how we have two different ways to see the story building and the character creation, also DMing. I think we're a good example of two completely different styles. I go a little bit more freestyle with it, while you delve into the rules head first. So I hope that this was also a little bit visible, so people can understand that it also very custom to each game that you will be doing. You cannot expect your DM back home to be the same as the DM that you have here, or people to be, using the same rules all the time. It is always nice to give them, some time also to get used to you and you get used to them, and some creative freedom over your creation, because you have creative freedom over theirs. And that's about all of the people involved. Yeah.
It is a thing to experience by a lot of people, and you want to get the most fun out of it. In the end, it's just a group of friends who want to tell a story together. And you should always keep that in mind.
Yep. It's also really interesting to see how other characters will rub off onto your character in the end. I started with the very egotistic dwarf ones, and we ended up being, almost lawfully good, trying to do the best for humanity. And it was just because there was one cleric who really, really pressed that in every game. So in the end, we just all went, I guess we're saving these villains too. And we ended up really better people by the end of it.
Yeah. A lot of developments, of course, I mean, it's natural if you think about it. Your character travels with a lot of interesting figures that are just as peculiar as the character you've created. So naturally, they will bounce off each other. Another good point that Patrick... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, please go on.
Okay. Another point that Patrick has mentioned I want to also touch on is that the DM, even though he's a narrator, is a player himself as well. And you will also bounce off your characters and gain experience from a lot of situations. I've had a couple of things made clear to me the first sessions, something I have to improve on and still are improving on. Not everybody's born ready. It may seem like a daunting task, but no worries. Also,
and it is important to give feedback.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I ask for a lot of feedbacks in my dungeon, because there's no better feedback than from the players who are playing with your dungeon. Yeah, to touch on the critical role, which I mentioned at the beginning, it is nice to draw some inspiration from there, but curb your expectations, please, so to say. These people are actors, as well as a lot of people that go live. Even Neffy and I are rather experienced in role-playing, so even if you take our standard, probably won't be applicable to your dungeon. So be patient. Everybody's starting out, and yeah, go ahead.
And something that is okay in one dungeon one session of one dungeon might not be okay on the next.
Yeah.
So make sure to be in touch. Also, I mean, it is also, you give a challenge to yourself to overcome, and your character has challenges to overcome, but that doesn't mean that you should be feeling very uncomfortable. So try to be very in touch with your DM and the other players, and make sure to not, frustrate yourself out of the game.
Yeah.
By not speaking up.
As I said, if you're not having fun, something's wrong.
Kiona, write a nice one. Your character either dies a villain or lives long enough to become a hero, or wasn't the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there are no more other questions...
maybe one last tip.
Yeah.
If you want to have something cool that is outside of the, I hope not a lot of DMs are listening now and hate me for this, but if you want something that is cool and it's outside of the rules and it's a little bit, touching the edges of the rules, it might be a good idea to make a token offering to your DM and be like, I will get this really nice,
cake.
Huge flying crow, but I will be following this god that if something happens, my shadow will be against me. Like, give them something that they can have fun with.
Yep.
And you will be amazed on how many things will be allowed after that.
As I said, the priority of this is fun. In my opinion, homebrew, which is the official term for things that you think of yourself or introduce apart from the system, is fine. There's a lot of fun to be had there, and I think it's fine to say that you like this and you want it, and as long as it's interesting, it doesn't negatively influence either the story or the other characters per se. It's only limited to your character and it isn't blowing the rules out of proportion. I don't see any issue with it. There shouldn't be an issue with it, since systems are made to be adapted.
There's usually not a problem with it.
No, I don't see a problem with it. Like, just go nuts. It like the fun part, what people often forget, I really want to touch on this, is that all is a fantasy. This system is a fantasy. The story is a fantasy. So why is this fantasy thing different from this other fantasy thing? It doesn't make any sense. The only difference is this one has a D&D on it and this one does not. So...
Well, one thing that I really like about vampires, and when you ask me about what I like so much about vampires, the first rule of vampires is that the storyteller can bend any and all rules of vampires in order to have fun. And I like this idea about all of the games. I mean, I think we are repeating a little bit ourselves, but it's also extremely important to understand that it is extremely freeing and also extremely, well, I guess fun.
Yep. I think
Okay.
that's a good note to end on. Fun. Fun is the most important thing. Just have fun, guys. That's it. Alright, I think we conclude this at this time. We're
Yes, I think we're
an hour
done.
over time. Whatever.
If anybody is having any questions, the questions are still open. But I guess we're gonna close the stream.
Yeah,
soon.
I post the kick-in Fanaat link into the chat, so even if people are looking at playback, they can still access the Discord. This
Yes.
should be the invite link, I think.
Probably.
Probably. If not, get into
If not,
contact.
Rover, Bram,
Yeah.
Kiona, Patrick, anybody who's there, just put the correct link.
Yep.
We-
So you can talk to us in Discord. Also, my name is Leo, or game attack is Kryolox. So just message me if you have any questions about 5e. We are the roleplay committee, so we're responsible for your questions, and we gladly answer them. No problem.
And since you said I'm Nefeli and my name in Discord is Normal Human,
No, don't touch. Don't get into this.
I'm not. I stopped after that.
Thanks.
There are reasons.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for listening to us ramble.
Okay.
This podcast was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I hope it is recorded somewhere.
Yeah, we'll record it on the
Okay.
channel. Yeah, with that, we say bye to you guys. We hope you have a nice day and a nice kick-in for the rest.
And see you soon in the Kelder.
See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.